Everybody's got a price, it's the $1 million man. Podcast in demand. Understand, everybody's got a price. $1 million man. Everybody's got a price. $1 million man. Everybody's got a pod, it's the $1 million man. Podcast in demand. Understand, everybody's got a price. $1 million man. Everybody's got a price.
What's up, everybody? It's Marcus D'Angelo, and we're back for another episode of Everybody's Got a Pod. And of course, I'm joined by the Hall of Famer, the $1 Million Man, Ted DiBiase. Ted, how you doing, brother?
Brother, I am doing absolutely marvelous today. Actually, my wife and I later today are going to get in my truck, and we're going to drive to the Mississippi Gulf Coast, and we're going to stay at the Hara Casino and Resort for the weekend. I love my grandkids, but, you know, every now and then it's like you got to have a break. So we're going to take a break, and I'm going to go probably blow some money.
Very well earned. You know, Ted is keeping busy, going to appearances, and man, he's on the road, you know, nearly about as much as he was back in the day. So look, if you follow Ted on social media, MDM Ted DiBiase, he's posting about a lot of these places that he's going to be at. So make sure you go out of your way to see Ted live, because man, he's still, as they used to say back in the day, shitting and getting, right?
Yep, there we go. You know, I mean, it's not as bad. I mean, back in the day, it was every day. I mean, we were just talking about that, but yeah, you know, the industry has changed, and for the talent, it's, you know, it's better. There's no doubt. I mean, the guys now, they work 4 days a week, and I mean, and they're off 3, and it's like, I'm happy for them, but I just think, oh my gosh, you know. But you guys need to, all you young guys need to thank me too, because if it wasn't for us busting our asses, you wouldn't be doing that now.
Man, just think, if you were only working 4 days a week, the kind of mileage you could have saved on your butt. You could still be working.
Oh gosh, it's just crazy.
Well, look, today we've got a really interesting topic. We're talking about Money Inc. The original plan here was like, yeah, we'll just do an episode about it. And people who follow my other podcast, The Snake Pit with Jake Roberts, though they've already come to find that this happens pretty often, where I'll start doing the research and I'm like, I can't make this one episode. There's just too much to cover. So we're going to be doing part 1 of Money Inc. Part 2 will be coming sometime soon. But before we get started, I want to remind everybody to get over to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/@everybody's-got-a-pod. We did a huge giveaway to kick off the show last month, and we have more on the way. All you've got to do to be eligible is get over there, subscribe, and you're automatically entered for all future giveaways. It's that simple. Plus, we have content you won't want to miss there, including YouTube exclusive videos. It's content you can't hear anywhere else, and we try to release one every single Monday. Again, it's youtube.com/@everybody's-got-a-pod. Subscribe today. Well, coming out of your singles feud with Virgil, you'd work with IRS a couple times at live events in late 1991, but then you're working with the Repo Man at this Tuesday in Texas and at a couple live events as we move into 1992. Putting you with Darso kind of feels random at this time.
Yeah.
And the Repo Man wasn't exactly a strong character. Like Barry Darso, great wrestler,
Yeah.
but maybe not the best creative for him. What can you tell us about Barry and your thoughts on this gimmick?
Well, I mean, I have all the respect in the world for Barry. I mean, Barry's one of those guys. There are a bunch of guys that came out of Minnesota that got into business and did really well, and Barry's one of them. You know, oh my gosh, there's a slew of them. You know, and it's kind of like, and again, I would give a lot of credit to the Bern Gagne territory, because that's where they all came from. Minneapolis was the headquarters of that territory, and a territory that I never, just didn't ever happen, that I would go there and it just, I don't know, just the way things work out and the way you go. But those guys were good. And Barry, Barry's a great hand. He really is. I no criticism there. Just a good guy.
Good guy, maybe just not the best creative with the Repo Man. Kind of they say that this was kind of the era where Vince McMahon he'd be trying to think of a gimmick, and he'd be like, well, what annoys me? And he'd be like, well, paying taxes to the IRS is annoying. Oh, Repo Man, those are Like, oh, dentist. Everybody hates a dentist. So then,
oh,
Isaac
oh, oh,
Yankem came along.
oh, yeah, yeah.
So just kind of a weird era, transitional era, I guess you could say. You talking about AWA makes me wonder, did you ever have the opportunity to work with Nick Bockwinkel?
With Nick Bockwinkel,
Yes.
you know what? No, I knew him very well. And again, Nick's another guy, major guy. I mean, he was their world champion for a long time, and great guy. But I just, we would like, for example, Nick was, the guy that was, there. He was a Minnesota guy, but he also would come down to like Houston. It's funny, Houston, Texas. Uh, it was funny. It's kind of like, and it was like St. Louis. Like St. Louis was technically part of. I'm sorry. St. Louis was technically part of the Kansas City territory,
Mm-hmm.
but it was an entity of its own. I mean, like, because the talent that came into St. Louis and worked St. Louis were from all the other territories. So and that was kind of the thing with Nick Bockwinkel. I mean, and where I would see him was not in St. Louis, it was Houston, and I can't remember why now. He was coming down there and making appearances. Again, Houston was again technically part of, I mean, Bill Watts's territory, but had it been like one of those hubs where I think the guy's name was Paul Bosch.
In Houston, yeah.
Yeah. And Paul would draw the talent from around the country to come in and do his shows. And so it was just kind of set apart, kind of like St. Louis. And that's where I met and watched Nick work. And he was great.
Man, it would have been cool to see a match with you guys. I was hoping you were going to say, "Oh yeah, there's something out there," and I could find it on the internet. But
No, no,
is
no.
what it is. I know everybody's kind of moving in different directions. And speaking of moving in different directions, here in late '91, you're moving all the way back out to Tokyo to the Egg Dome for a Super World Sports / World Wrestling Federation / Pro Wrestling Fujiwara / EMLL show. Another one of those big joint shows there in Japan. It's on 12/12 in front of more than 40,000 fans. You would defeat Kerry Von Erich here with a little help from Sherry. So Kerry was a very popular but troubled performer by all accounts. He was here in
Right.
the WWF now as the Texas Tornado, and great look. But man, just kind of a troubled guy. What did you think of working with him and of being back in the Tokyo Dome after the great success you had in Japan?
Well, I mean, it was always great to go to Japan, and but the people would see me in a different light, than when I was there with Stan Hansen. Um, but again, no, nothing no negatives about Japan. I just love Japan. I mean, I've even told my wife, I said, I wish, it's been so long now. I think anybody that I may have known that lived there, there's Japanese that could have said, "Hey, come on over, Ted, and we'll take you and Melanie around and show you all the sites." There's nobody there now to do that, but I would have loved to have done it. Japan is a very, I mean, unbelievably clean country. I mean, you could almost eat off the sidewalk. It's unreal. But
Wow.
and like Tokyo, especially, I mean, one of the largest cities in the world. Now, you can't say that about New York. Yeah, yeah.
No, I don't think you could eat off the sidewalk in New York.
No, not at all.
Man, that's incredible. I would love to go to Japan someday, and I'm really excited to talk to you more about your time in Japan. Believe me, folks, it's coming up. We've got so much to cover here on the show, years and years of content. So Ted, here's a report that I haven't heard anything about before, and it kind of cements this idea that Vince McMahon was ready to put you into a tag team. This is from the February 3rd, 1992 Observer. The imbalanced tag team situation, 4 babyface teams, 3 heel teams, will be balanced as they're putting Ted DiBiase and Shawn Michaels together, which should become among the top 5 tag teams in the world. Then in the very next edition of The Observer, we've got this. While not even hinted at as of yet, there are rumors flying that the tag team title match will send Legion of Doom versus Ted DiBiase and IRS, who are going to form a new heel tag team. IRS replacing Shawn Michaels, who was originally to team with DiBiase, but that idea has apparently been scrapped for reasons which I have no idea about. So, man, interesting note here from Meltzer. Thinking about you and Shawn Michaels working as a tag team sounds just incredible. Do you remember anything about it or why they would have pivoted to Mike instead?
You're going to love this, but this is the first I've heard of that.
Really?
Nobody ever spoke to me. Vince never spoke to me. Nobody ever spoke to me and said, "Hey, thinking about putting you and Shawn together."
Wow.
There was never a conversation about it. So I don't know where the Observer's getting they're getting it from high places, I guess. But when that guy knows more than I know, that's crazy.
That's a problem.
But that's a problem.
It's a lot of people on other podcasts, because in many of the podcasts I work with or work for, they use Meltzer as research, and a lot of times the host will get pissed off and be like, "That's just a bunch of Meltzer fiction." He's just writing that shit to sell newsletters. But Conrad pointed out, and I agree with it. I think that Meltzer has got like some inside sources, and sometimes the guys will just mess with him and just make stuff up and see, like, let's see if he prints this, and then he does. He's got to kind of eat.
Well, hey, and I don't know. Maybe this is one of those instances because there was never any. Vince never talked to me. And there was no ever meeting between me and Shawn. I mean, Shawn and I are great friends. Shawn's one of the greatest talents that the business has ever had. But I mean, there was never any talk. It's like when Vince came to me, he came to me and Mike and said, "I'm going to make you guys a team." So that was
all right. Well, it's an interesting what if. Just thinking about you and Shawn Michaels as a tag team, I think it really could have worked.
Oh yeah. I mean, gosh, with a guy with that kind of talent, it was just unreal. Yeah.
Well, Ted, you're coming off a run as the top singles heel in the company for years, and all of a sudden, as you said, Vince comes to you and he wants to put you in the tag team scene with the WWF. What did you think about this transition at the time?
Well, I mean, it's really not what you want to do. It's kind of like when you've been there, at the top and done it. But everything, it's kind of like you can only stay there so long. You know what I'm saying? I mean, especially as a heel, like with your super baby faces. I mean, like Hogan. But eventually, everything's got to change, and you got to put new faces in there. So it was not unusual for you to, stay in the mix, but now you're not at the top. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And I was making good money, so I wasn't complaining.
Yeah, that makes me wonder, and it's something that I hear a lot about Vince at this time because, again, there were no guaranteed contracts at this time. You guys were all independent contractors, and one of the things that I've heard over the years was that Vince generally hated tag teams because that means that you've got to pay 4 people for one match as opposed to 2 people for one match. And so, I mean, when you're hearing this news, do you think you would have had any insecurity of like, man, this might mess with my money?
I didn't worry about it. And again, the other thing with Vince is, whether it's said or unsaid, there are certain talent that he, it's kind of like when Steve Austin came along and I was managing. Vince put Steve Austin with me, and we call it the rub because I was one of those guys that had been over really well, that had been at the very top, and now I'm a manager, and it's like putting him with me is going to help elevate him faster. I mean, obviously, and and my gosh, Steve took the ball and ran with it. After a while, he didn't need me or anybody, but that was the deal. That was the reason why. It was kind of, we call it the rub, the rub to help somebody, to help, highlight them quicker.
So Vince had a lot of respect for you. So you didn't have any fear of like, oh man, he's gonna mess with my money. It was always like, hey, look, he likes and respects me. He's gonna take care of me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, Ted, seemingly out of nowhere, we have this in the February 17th Observer. In a major surprise, the Legion of Doom dropped the WWF Tag Team titles on Friday night, 2/7, in Denver to Ted DiBiase and IRS. While it was somewhat well known on the inside that there would be a title switch involving the two teams before WrestleMania, the fact that it happened so abruptly appears to have been a last-minute decision. So at this point, Ted, your team with IRS hadn't even debuted on TV yet, and you're winning the tag team titles at a house show with very little fanfare and no acknowledgement on TV right away, just due to the filming timing of everything. Hawk of the Road Warriors was suspended shortly hereafter. Do you remember if his issues behind the scenes would have led to such an abrupt change here?
Well, and I think they did, and again, Hawk was a great guy. I mean, he was like a little kid, like a little kid who never wants to grow up. He was really good in the ring, but Hawk had his demons, and we all do. And so there's, but as far as working with him, and Animal was more of the. I mean, he was the Animal was the guy that was going to have to keep Hawk in line. Yeah, Animal was the stable partner, and it just Hawk went off the deep end.
Yeah, Jake mentioned on our podcast recently, the Snake Pit, that Hawk was really struggling with addiction by the time his first WWF run came to be.
Yeah.
Do you remember seeing any of those issues firsthand?
Not firsthand, but we all knew it.
Man, it's a shame. Such a talented guy, such a great tag team. I mean, despite the issues that they were having, they're the Legion of Doom. They're one of the most over tag teams ever. What did you think of getting to work with these guys?
Oh gosh, we loved working with them. It's kind of like, and that was just it. I mean, they wouldn't have been in the position they were in if they didn't have a strong presence and a way to get over. And so, working with them was not that, not that hard. And they had been heels, and now with you're working with me and Mike Sunday, you're a baby face, and I can't ever, again, memory. I can't ever remember if they were, did they show up as heels or did they show up as baby faces?
I want to say that they showed up as baby faces, but I don't know that definitively. I wasn't watching at the time. I know that they were programmed right away with Demolition when they came in, and I feel like Demolition would have been heels.
Yeah, you're right. I remember that now. Thank you.
Yes. So, by the way, I feel like I should mention this. It's kind of off topic, but it did happen at this time. In February 1992, Buzz Sawyer would pass away at just 32 years old from heart failure due to a drug overdose. I've heard a lot of mixed things about Buzz over the years. I know that you spent some time around him. I know that on Magnum TA's recent episode of Dark Side of the Ring, he talked about how Buzz Sawyer basically tried to screw him out of money, tricked him about when it came to training. What were your honest impressions of Buzz?
I didn't have, I had as little to do with Buzz Sawyer as I could, because he was like as wild as an orangutan, and I don't know, I will admit he was, when it comes to wrestling, he was very talented.
Yeah.
But his personality and everything else about him was less than what would you say?
Less than ideal, I guess.
Yeah. I'm trying to be nice here. It's like,
I appreciate you trying to do
yeah,
the diplomatic thing.
yeah. It's like, I just, and because I saw that, I stayed away. I didn't even. I realized the guy could work, but he was crazy.
Super talented guy, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's I've heard that kind of sentiment echoed by basically most people who were around Buzz, where man, just off the rails.
off the rail.
Well, 10 days after you guys won the title, the WWF finally acknowledged you at a TV taping on 2/17. They claimed that Jimmy Hart struck Hawk with his megaphone, which isn't actually what happened in front of a live audience. But now Jimmy Hart was jumping from managing the natural disasters to managing yourself in IRS. The disasters would subsequently turn babyface, claiming that Hart cheated them out of their title shot against the LOD. You and Mike are both great talkers here. Why do you think the decision was made to put you with Jimmy Hart?
I'm really not sure. That's and I was kind of like, uh, okay. And to Jimmy's credit, he was great on the mic,
Yeah,
but I didn't feel like we necessarily needed a manager. But I don't know. Maybe it was Vince trying to make our tag team, that much more. I don't know. Give it more.
a little more oomph.
Yeah. I don't know. Because like Mike's not a bad talker, I've always been good on the interviews. So to be to be the full banana, you got to be able to do both. And a lot of times, and I think I've said this before, a lot of times managers would be given to guys that were great in the ring, but weren't so great on the microphone, and so
Right.
they would be given a manager to do the talking for them. And in our case, we didn't really need it, but we got it.
Yeah, that's why this whole thing really stuck out to me because I was like, they were both really good interviews. So it feels bizarre to pull Jimmy away from the natural disasters, who maybe weren't so strong on the mic, and give him to you guys. But
Yeah,
in any
I know.
case, it was cool, like, seeing you
Yeah,
guys come to the ring with Jimmy, and he'd have, like, his painted, jacket on with you guys on the back. It was awesome.
yeah.
It just kinda didn't make sense on paper, but I do wanna ask, everybody seems to have one, so let's see if you've got one. Any good Jimmy Hart stories?
Uh, well, I know Jimmy has this thing about being on time.
Mm,
Oh my gosh, Jimmy shows up. If your flight leaves at 9 o'clock in the morning, he's going to be there at 7. Jimmy was just he was that if there was a thing about Jimmy, it was that. It was like, you didn't have to ever worry about Jimmy being late because he was ridiculously early. uh,
man,
I don't
what
know. Has
a
anybody ever said
character.
that?
I have heard that elsewhere, and
Oh
man,
yeah.
just what a character.
You couldn't ask for a nicer guy.
Oh, amazing
Oh,
guy,
unbelievable.
amazing guy.
And it's kind of like what was it? What was his group? The Gentrys.
Yes.
Yeah, and yeah, and I talked to him a little bit because I was a big Elvis Presley fan, and when Elvis passed away, I was like everybody else, shocked that he died so young, 42.
Oh,
And if there's one entertainer that I ever would have gone out of my way to meet, it would have been him. And Jimmy, Jimmy had met him, had been around him some, but so I always bugged Jimmy about Elvis.
well, on in the March 9th Observer, it's announced that due to the suspension of Hawk, it'll be yourself and IRS taking on the natural disasters at WrestleMania. Let's talk about Mike for a minute. Fantastic wrestler, is both an amateur and a pro. Had some success as part of the U.S. Express and the Varsity Club, among other things that he's done.
Yep,
And
yep,
now he's here in the WWF in a tax collector gimmick.
yeah.
Do you remember the first time you would have met Mike?
Well, yeah, and I didn't meet him till he was in the WWF, and
Oh,
so there's Mike and I never crossed. Not I can't you know I can't remember ever crossing paths with Mike before the WWF. And he'd been around a while too. So, but as far as becoming friends and working together, we worked very well together. There was, I don't have a bad thing to say about Mike.
did you guys get close pretty quickly?
Yeah, yeah, pretty quickly. You know, um, I was in a lot of ways at that time still a bit of a wild orangutan in terms of the party life,
Right.
but that came to an end soon. So that's
Yes.
that's another story.
Well, we can chat about that one on part two because I know that following WrestleMania 9 in Vegas, there was some fallout, and you'd have to take some time away. So,
Yeah.
we'll discuss it sometime down the road. But his gimmick, IRS, a former tax collector turned wrestler. What did you think?
Well, I thought it was great. I thought, wow, yeah, Scott, what a combination, right? You like the $1 million man and the IRS. I mean, like, what better way to cheat on your taxes? It's like, and he's telling everybody pay your taxes, and yeah, I thought, it was pretty. I don't know whose idea it was, but I thought it was pretty good.
That sounds like some Vince McMahon stuff. Tired
Yeah.
of paying all those high taxes, and he was like, you know what, I'm going to clap back a little bit with this
Well, you
gimmick.
don't think Vince has ever cheated on his taxes?
Well, of course not. But and on paper, this gimmick, it seems terrible. Like if you said to somebody in a creative meeting, like, "Hey, I've got this great idea. This guy used to be a tax collector, and now he wants to fight people for a living." It's like, what are you talking about? But really, well, like whenever Mike started to do it and do like his vignettes and all that stuff, it's like,
Yeah,
hey, this kind of works.
yeah, yeah, yeah. That's what I said. It worked, and we had a good run together. I can't now. You probably know because you look into all this stuff how long our run was. I think we had the belts, we lost the belts, we got them back again. I
I
can't
want to say
remember.
that you guys wound up winning the belt something like 3 times on and off,
Yeah,
and then you were still a tag team with him all the way up until your in ring retirement. So like mid
yeah,
'93.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So we'll discuss all that coming up. Was it a smooth transition for you to go from being a singles wrestler back into a tag team after so many years?
Uh, um, a little bit, but I mean, it's kind of like, but I had always, in other words, I was never remembered as being part of a tag team
Right.
prior to hooking up with Mike and Money Inc. My thing was kind of like the Freebirds. Michael Hayes and Buddy Roberts. And uh, who's the other one?
Garvin, or no,
No,
Gordy.
no, Gordy. Yeah, and Gordy. Oh my gosh, you talk about a worker. He was great. Gordy was the best worker on that team. Michael Hayes can talk like nobody's business, and
Yep.
still he can still talk. uh, but I mean, those guys were known as a team from day one. The Freebirds, that was their thing. Not, I don't think any of them. Well, maybe Gordy, and Gordy probably in Japan, more so than the United States. Had a run as a singles guy, but by and large, I think those guys were always remembered as a team. And I don't think that I think I am more remembered as the $1 million man, the single wrestler, than I'm remembered as being part of Money Inc. I mean, that's you know,
Right. No, it's I think you're
yeah,
absolutely right. Most people, when they think of you, they think of, you kicking the basketball and kicking the kids out of the pool and whatnot. They aren't thinking
yeah,
about Money Inc. But it is an interesting kind of follow-up because, like you're doing the Money Inc. thing after Hogan leaves the territory. So it's kind of that transition to the new generation era. So like technically, a lot of people think of you as a manager at that time, but really technically you were still working during the
yeah,
new generation.
yeah. So
Well, weirdly, on the way to Mania, you're working a lot of singles matches with the British Bulldog. You're one half of the tag team champions, so it just kind of feels like it would make more sense to have you working with Mike on the way to a tag team match at WrestleMania. But here you find yourself. I know that Jake does not exactly get the warm and fuzzies when he thinks about the British Bulldog. So I'm wondering how you felt about him and working with him.
well, I mean, I had no I had no angst about working with him. Um, he was a good guy. He was easy to work with, in my opinion.
Hmm.
I mean, I don't think he was like one of the greatest workers of all time, if that's what I'm saying.
Right.
But I mean, he had the look, he had the appearance, uh, and he wasn't too bad on the mic. You know, it was what it was.
He had all the tools, that's for sure.
Yeah.
And he's about to have a big match here coming up at SummerSlam. But right now we're at WrestleMania VIII. You guys are in front of a crowd of more than 62,000 at the Hoosier Dome in Indianapolis. You're on 7th, and we've got the final moments of your match with the Natural Disasters.
Okay, shove the referee again, dummy. You're gonna lose the title. Your chance at trying to win the title. Oh, I'm confused. Oh,
Why don't you just go back
I've got a
down to
headache.
the
I've got a headache.
former champ's dressing room?
I got a headache from you.
Or should I say X?
I got a headache from you.
X sounds more permanent. Double clothesline, and I think DiBiase got the worst of that.
But they're both down. Or is the big guy falling asleep?
I don't think so.
Not gonna happen.
Irwin looking unconcerned. He's taken some tremendous punishment so far in this one.
You see the condition the athletes are in? You take the beating the way they do.
Well, Irwin came in, thought he was going to get a piece of a worn down Typhoon. Instead, he's got a tiger by the tail in Earthquake. Hard into the corner. Clothesline and a beauty. And another one for DiBiase, who sneaks in. And now all 4 men are in.
Get out of there, get out of there. Make them chase you, make them chase you. Make them run out of gas.
Double slingshot together.
That's what you gotta do with men that big, make them run out of gas.
Whoa! Irwin in a whole heap of trouble, look out! Oh,
He's not legal, he's not legal.
no, but Earthquake is.
But is DiBiase legal or IRS? Oh, and he feels victory, he smells it, he tastes it.
Oh, look at this! Jimmy Hart jumped right in there and pulled Irwin outside the ring. What are they doing? I don't believe this. It looks like they forfeited the purse money.
They're taking their ball, they're going home, that's fair. I used to do it a lot.
Ladies and gentlemen,
A deliberate count out.
awards the decision as a result of a countout to the Natural Disaster.
They won nothing.
That's not right.
However,
That's the rules.
only way a championship changes hands in a title match is by a pinfall or a submission. That did not happen, therefore, still World Wrestling Federation Tag Team Champions, $1 million man Ted DiBiase and IRS.
Well, there you have it, WrestleMania VIII, a non-finish, but really, I think it kind of worked for you guys as characters, where it's like, you're screwing the fans out of this opportunity to see you, take a loss.
Yeah, I mean, it just made us bigger heels than ever. It's like,
they were pissed.
oh yeah, people were definitely pissed. It's kind of like, and you think of the other team, well, we won, but we didn't.
Right.
Yeah. So.
And years later, I remember seeing Randy Orton kind of do this sort of thing where, like, he'd be on the verge of losing his championship and he would like punch the referee or something to get out of it.
Yeah.
And like, I think it's good heat. But looking back on it, WrestleMania VIII, working with the Natural Disasters, what did you think?
I mean, it was what it was. I mean, I don't know that those guys ever had the kind of steam, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It wouldn't. Okay, I'll put it like this: it's like if Mike and I were wrestling the Freebirds for the World Tag Team titles, they would think there would be a lot more interest, is what I'm saying.
Yes.
And I don't know the Natural Disasters, ever had that. And I'm not taking anything away from either guy. I'm just saying I don't know that they ever had that level of, what's the word?
They didn't reach that level of popularity where it
Yeah.
would be kind of like a fever pitch for people to see them defeat you guys as heels.
Yeah, I mean, like if we'd have been wrestling, Jake and Shawn Michaels or something.
Oh, yeah.
Oh my gosh, yeah. But that wasn't, you know. But it is what it is. It's what it was for the time.
Yep, whole other ball of wax, but it was pretty heavily criticized in the Observer, with Meltzer putting most of the blame on Typhoon, just kind of saying like he just wasn't really up for the task. You guys would work with them again, and Meltzer would say that the matches were a little bit better, but that's because you, Ted, were
Yeah.
kind of going out of your way to like bump your ass off and really kind of make the match shine.
Well,
So
and again, and this is like Terry Funk was like one of my mentors. And he told me, he said, Teddy, he says, especially when you're the heel, he says, if you're working with somebody that's not that good, you've got to make up the difference. In other words, you got to create, you got to make up, you got to mix it up enough to where you get the effect you want. So that's what I was trying to do.
Well, and it's these guys were more spectacles than they were like great technicians. Of course, they
Yeah.
weren't great technicians. They're huge, but really, it's about the spectacle. So I don't know.
Yeah.
People criticize the match. I thought it was good.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
Another interest.
I mean, I'm not against nothing against either one of those guys. But if I would have had my brothers, I would have wanted to wrestle a different team. I didn't put a whole lot in that match. I mean, I said okay, but I didn't think it's like, oh goodness, like most of these people came to see this match.
No, and look, to your point, if you were working against the Hart Foundation or like the
Yeah.
Rockers or some team like that,
Yeah.
man, you guys would have torn the roof off the place.
Yeah.
Well, another interesting note at this time is that Bill Watts is taking over for Jim Herd in WCW. Jake had agreed to a deal with Herd to come to WCW, but with him out the door, Jake is stuck taking a much lower contract from Watts, and he still hates Watts to this very day as a result of it. I've got a lot of people I've heard a lot of people over the years express some disdain for Watts, but you were on pretty good terms with him, right?
Yeah. I mean, I'm good friends with Bill to this day. I mean, it's kind of like. I respected Bill for number one, for his savvy. I mean, it's kind of like it was Terry Funk that told me this, because I told Terry how much I admired Bill's savvy, and he said, he said he agreed with me. He says, yeah, he's really a smart guy. Said he learned what he learned from Eddie Graham. Florida. But Eddie Graham, who was very highly respected and regarded as promoter, he learned what he learned from Dory Funk Sr.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, that's the chain there. So
part of that, like we talk about coaching trees in the NFL. There's like a coaching tree almost in professional wrestling. Every it's like a lineage of what folks learn down the line.
And again, I will say that I've said it to Bill, Bill later in his life, and Bill was kind of almost like a bully.
That's what they all say.
But Bill became a Christian, and a lot about Bill changed after he became a Christian. And I told him, and I laughingly told him, and I said, you know what, Bill, I sure wish you had been a Christian when I was working for you. He said, why? I said, because you'd have paid me better. And that's just, but it's, it's the nature of the beast. It's kind of like, where else are you going to go? Once again, especially once, Vince McMahon, basically took over professional wrestling. Where are you going to go? I mean, it's like, okay, if you're gonna wrestle, make any money, you're gonna have to wrestle for that man. And it's like you don't have a lot of. It's not like you're a football player and you go, hey, if you don't give me the money I want, I'm going to go to work for them.
There's not 32 other organizations.
Yeah, there's no other organization that you can go to and make that kind of money. And so, it's almost like, take what I give you, but I mean, there was some negotiation, but you know,
And Mid-South was not publicly owned. So it's, if you are making more money, that's a direct correlation to Bill Watts making less money. So he is not interested necessarily, or wouldn't be interested in giving a lot of guys pay raises, I'm sure.
yeah.
Well, on the way to SummerSlam at Wembley, you'd continue to work with the Natural Disasters, the Bushwhackers, and High Energy. And on the 720 TV taping, you would drop the tag team titles to the Natural Disasters when the briefcase sneak attack you guys have been using to win backfired and IRS accidentally clocked you. Earthquake got the pinfall. Vince had other plans for Money Inc. at this point, but by the time we get to SummerSlam, it's the rematch fans have been waiting for between you guys and the Road Warriors. It's a crowd of more than 80,000 fans at an iconic event. Let's watch a short clip of it.
Come on, Teddy. Take it to him. Nail him. Nail him. Chop him. Chop that Hawk right to the neck. Come on.
Hawk to the buckle. And the $1 Million Man trying to set up. No, again reversal. Off the rope. And Ted DiBiase slides to the outside. Time to regroup. Hands it out ringside, shouting, Irwin.
That's his name. See how popular
Yes, it is, but he's not all that fond of it himself. Irwin for the rock. Ooh, down to the buckle. Oh, on the hand.
He's standing on his tongue.
Yes, that's not his tongue, it's his tie.
They tell from here. I wouldn't put it past them.
Look at this. Animal has Irwin in the air. Unbelievable strength and power on the part of Animal.
Irwin,
Cover. One. We get. That's all they get.
Irwin's no midget. He goes over 260 pounds. That had to take a lot out of DiBiase, too.
Oh, no. Look at this. Power slam.
All right, so there it was. You guys put over the Legion of Doom in front of just this unbelievable crowd there at Wembley.
Yeah, that's the largest crowd I ever wrestled in front of. 80,000.
Insane. You and I talked before about how you saw what happened at WrestleMania III with that giant crowd, and you're like, man, I got to get there. And then you get there, and at WrestleMania IV, you're in Trump Plaza, which is like 20,000.
That's like, okay, I'm the headliner here, but what the heck?
But so, I mean, I would say that this one made up for it in front of all those fans. It's incredible.
Yeah.
And what a cool entrance that they had. They rode the motorcycles down to the ring, and, they were just super over in front of that Wembley crowd. And the crowd went berserk there at the end. Do you have any memories of the match?
Not really. I mean, I just, Hawk and Animal have always been friends. Never had any issues with them. I mean, it's kind of like I always told everybody, I said, don't let Hawk, I mean, he's a real nice guy, but if you ever had to walk down a dark alley, like say in New York City at, sometime in the early hours of the morning, if you could only have one guy walk with you, it might be Mike Hegstrom, because he was legit. He was a go-getter. He could, but I mean, sweetest guy you'd ever know.
Yeah, he was a bad dude, and
and again, but again, it was up to Animal, and I kind of felt sorry for Joe sometimes, because he had to keep Mike's oars in the water, and so anyway.
Man, we hear about that all the time, where Animal was really kind of all in on this thing and wanted to, kind of squeeze all the juice he possibly could out of the gimmick, especially here, on the biggest stage in professional wrestling. And what's interesting now, Ted, is the real story is what happens after this match. All that hype, all the fan reaction, a giant victory at SummerSlam, and suddenly it's just over for the Road Warriors. We've got this. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, and that was the other thing is, like I said, poor Joe was responsible, and had to be responsible for Mike. And I mean, we went on second because Joe realized Mike had taken something, and he went to Vince and he said, Vince, he says, I don't know if he'll be conscious, by the time we get to our match. that was the other thing in play there. So, yeah, Mike had a serious drug problem.
So I had never heard that, so that's interesting. He was under the influence while he was in the ring with you guys.
Well, yeah, but it's kind of like it, hadn't really had the opportunity to take effect.
Oh, okay. It hadn't kicked in yet.
That's why Joe went to Vince and he said, I don't think he'll, he's not going to be. I don't know about not. I don't know if it's like not conscious, but he might not be
functioning
well. So, and and rightfully so, it pissed Vince off, and that's why we went on second.
Absolutely. And look, after the show, things go from bad to worse. We've got this from the Observer from September 7th. Hawk quit the WWF after SummerSlam, and Animal is staying and will be repackaged as a singles wrestler. Officially, both Hawk and Berserker John Nord disappeared after the show in England, didn't fly back with everyone else, and didn't show up at television, leaving no word. Both were suspended for 6 weeks, but word has it that Hawk is fed up and he's not going back. Ted, do you remember any of this drama?
Oh yeah. And I'm sorry, but Mike was like being a big baby.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's like again, I felt sorry for Joe, for Animal, because here's a guy that's trying to do it right, and he's got a partner who basically is a nice guy, but just he doesn't have both his oars in the water. And again, when you're somebody dealing with a drug addiction, you got to get rid of it. You got to make a choice. It's either the drugs or your career.
Yeah, he unfortunately, Hawk is really putting Joe in a bad position here.
I felt sorry for Joe.
It's tough, and there was so much meat left on the bone for them in the WWF, and it's just all of a sudden I know that Joe doesn't last much longer after this either, and it's just boom, gone. So frustrating. And speaking of frustrating, I mean, you just put them over in front of this incredible crowd, and now it's kind of all for nothing because they're gone. I mean, afterwards, are you like, what the hell? Like, are you pissed off?
Well, yeah, kind of. It's like, okay, we just put these guys over, and for what?
Yeah, end of the day, there was no reason for it now. So frustrating.
And again, that's I mean, you can't blame the only one to blame is Mike.
Yeah.
It's like, it wasn't Vince's, doing, and Vince he was hot. Rightfully so. He was mad, real mad.
Hard not to be after that, man. And this is not too long after the whole everything happened with the Warrior holding him up, and then I know that he and Jake had issues, which led to Jake's departure. So man, being Vince McMahon doesn't sound like it's always easy, especially in this era with the Ring Boy deal going on, steroids. You've got guys who are having drug issues. You've got guys holding you up. It's like, man, being Vince McMahon could be a bummer sometimes. It sounds like. Well, Ted, that's actually going to do it for us this week. The story is far from over when it comes to Money Inc. We'll continue it sometime in the near future. But man, this was a lot of fun today. There's still so much to cover. We're going to be talking about WrestleMania 9. We're going to be talking about that infamous attack with the briefcase where you guys smashed Brutus Beefcake's face. So man, there is so much left to discuss. We will pick it up down the road. Before we go, I do want to remind you all that if you'd like to get this podcast on video with no commercials and get access to a ton of sports, entertainment, and other shows, get over to premierstreamingnetwork.com and sign up for Premiere Plus. RVD has a podcast there with my brother Dominic. Sabu has a podcast there. My friend Efren does the game event. And if you're a wrestling fan, if you're a sports fan in general, or if you're just looking for some great entertainment, you're going to find it over at premierstreamingnetwork.com when you sign up for Premiere Plus. I guarantee you're going to love it. And Ted, I'm loving what we're doing here, man. This has been such a blast. What a fun episode of Everybody's Got a Pod.
Thank you, man. And as I go, always remember, everybody's got a price for the $1 Million Man.
We will catch you guys next time right here on Everybody's Got a Pod.